Welcome everyone to an episode of the Old-Timers Comic Book Show, where the hosts aren't old, but the comics most certainly are. As always, it's a terrific trio with myself, the Professor,
Hey!
and the 13th Crusader.
Yo,
Buenos dias, senor.
buenos dias.
Buenos dias. All right, excellent. Season's greetings, gentlemen. It's just round the corner.
Yay!
Have we been good? Are we on the naughty list?
You know.
Yeah. I might get some colour in my fishnets this year. You never know.
It's not for me to say
Ah!
whether it's good or bad.
I don't know how you're there.
I usually eat the cookies and drink the milk, so
Oh,
they
really?
keep me on the naughty list.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. I keep, when my kids were small, they'd say, we'll put out some milk and a carrot for Santa and Rudolph. I'm like, yeah, Santa prefers beer. Hey, this is what you know, right? All right, this time around, we are looking at, because Christmas is just around the corner, when we were first timers, not old timers, we used to get all sorts of crazy characters, toys, figures, whatever, and that obviously sprung into comic books. Off the top of my head, I would say probably the most successful one of all those was probably Star Wars. I think Star Wars revolutionized that whole figure kind of thing, at least in my head. What about you guys? What was the figures and toys of choice back in the day?
We grew up in the I want to say it's like the golden age for multimedia, where the crossovers between movies, comics, and toys were just was Nirvana, right? I mean, we had all the best toy lines, to the point that now they're coming out with toy lines aimed at us from when we were little, right?
Yeah.
So Star Wars, of course, was the number one, but then as you got a little older, you started getting into like He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, or G.I. Joe, or what I can't even think of the other one. Then Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That was like
Turtles,
yeah, the Turtles were right at the end of my teenage years. So I didn't quite get into them as much, but of course when they started coming out with the superhero figures like Superpowers, or the Marvel Legends today, is totally aimed at me. I'm a sucker for every figure that they come out with, and especially the more obscure, the better for me.
So Star Wars is a international thing. G.I. Joe's quite stateside. Over here it was Battle Action Force. It was called
Same
Force.
figures though, right?
Same figures.
Battle Action Force.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there used to be a comic called Battle, and there used to be a comic called Action Force, and the two merged at some point to become Battle Action Force. There's one we haven't talked about, and we talked about it last time, ironically enough, and that's Marvel's Superhero Secret Wars.
Oh yeah, that's the original Marvels. Well, the Migos that came out before, but I was a little too young for Migo. I had some, but I wasn't like begging your mom to spend a couple of bucks on you whenever you get to the store. That was the Star Wars figures for me. Was you couldn't get out of there with like $1.99 for each of my brothers and me, and that's the good thing about having brothers is all the same age. Was you had 3 times as many toys. That's great.
Excellent. 13th, what about yourself?
Well, the professor mentioned Nirvana, which is a great band, but prior to Nirvana, all the toys that came out for it, he's absolutely correct. I was very, very young with the Star Wars line, so some of my cousins used to collect that, my older cousins. And then on came the race, right, to make miniaturized action figures, and then that's when you see G.I. Joe, who had been around for a while, but borrowed that from Star Wars and started making the miniature figures, and then there came that toy line and everything else. But it felt like the early 80s to mid 80s was almost like the golden age of action figures, and the race to get something out there while people were buying it, to get them to be loyal to that franchise, whatever it was, whether it was He-Man, Thundercats, still Star Wars, because they were still quite relevant throughout.
But it was the bleed through too, right? It was the all of a sudden the comic book spawns the toy line, or the toy line spawns the TV cartoon,
Yeah.
or or they're dreamt up together to be one big total package. Like if you remember, I think we were talking about the Ninja Turtles or something, where the Ninja Turtles, like within very short order, became this multi-mass media just juggernaut, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's funny. You talk about Nirvana of crossovers and stuff. What
Yeah.
we've got to remember is, especially with things like Star Wars, it wasn't like it is now where you turn on the telly, you can watch a new Star Wars product. All you had was the figures, the movie that you probably saw once or twice or maybe 3 times if you were lucky.
Your imagination.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And as for G.I. Joe, well, Mask was there as well.
Yeah.
Riding on the coattails of G.I. Joe.
Voltron was a big one too. They had
the Shogun Warriors. Remember them? Those were
right. I was gonna mention that earlier, that back then times were different. They didn't have the power of the internet to kind of help advertise and push things along. So the comics were a big part of that, and also not just to kind of show everyone who these people are, but also to kind of draft a story. And to kind of have that background for the toys.
Yeah, definitely.
Transformers. Who could say we did Transformers too?
I told my wife what the show was about as I was prepping this morning, and she said, "Well, what about Power Rangers?"
Oh, Jesus!
I was like, what about Power Rangers? I mean, Power Rangers. How did we not think of Power Rangers? You know?
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh. Anyway,
no kidding.
There's one for Mrs. H. Well done, Mrs. H. 1-0 to you. God damn it, son of a...
Well, it's because there's so many, and I think Power Rangers kind of missed our window, didn't it? Like the Power Rangers was early '90s, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. So for me, it would be a case of you'd watch Batman the Animated Series on a Saturday, which meant you would miss the Spider-Man cartoon and catch Power Rangers, but Spider-Man and Power Rangers repeated the next day, so you catch them on the flip, where Batman was only on the Saturday. So yeah.
It's funny that you guys mentioned these different toys and things, but they went to Marvel or DC to help them shape stories, and then they were like, "Hey, wait a minute, why don't we do this ourselves?" Like what you said with Marvel Superhero Secret Wars, that's an event that we did. Everybody's doing toys. Why don't we do the same? And now look today.
Yeah.
Yep. One of the ones we're talking about today was the fact that someone came to Marvel and said, "Can we create this? And if people like it, there's a toy. They want to do toys." Cool. So that was one of the things we're talking about today. So,
right then, should we get to it, gents?
Sure.
Si, senor.
Si, senor. Well, with this bad boy, I think you have to go with this. This is a trailer for something that we absolutely love. It's our first book. Check it out.
Thundercats! Thundercats are on the move. Thundercats are loose. Feel the magic, hear the roar. Thundercats are loose. Thunder, 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 Thundercats. Thunder, 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 Thundercats. Thunder, thunder, Thundercats. Thunder, 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 Thundercats.
Oh, yeah. You could have played the whole thing. I wouldn't have.
I could have. I was worried about copyright, so what can I say? All right, so Thundercats. First up, that I've got to say straight away that intro is absolutely the bee's knees. It has to be the best intro of cartoons. Yeah. Agreed?
It's definitely up there.
For sure.
Definitely up there.
And not only is that cartoon so great, these are the figures.
Now, and correct me if I'm wrong, Johnny, or R13. These toys came out like way after the fact, didn't they?
I
Wasn't
can't
the cartoon
remember.
on for a while, and then all of a sudden
Oh,
there were toys after
I
way
don't
after the
know.
fact.
I don't know if it was way after because I remember the cartoon coming out and the first toy I had gotten from this line was Lion-O. I had gotten it
Oh,
as a present and it lit up and everything. It was around the same time as the cartoon,
Huh. Okay.
if I
I want
remember
to.
properly.
I want to say right from the get go that Cheetara is a hottie totty. I'm just saying. I'm saying it. We're all thinking it. We're all thinking Cheetara super hot. It's fine.
There's a
I'm all
reason
right.
why Lionel's sword grows, Johnny.
Yeah, indeed it does. All right then. So that said, we start off with the sublime. We hang around the middle ground with the figures, and then we get this. Oh my god! Right, this is Thundercats #1 from November 1985. Couldn't find it on eBay. It's from a US import. Go collect. Have a grade 9. Sold in the last year. Guess how much?
$100.
Absolutely right. $108. Well
Whoa,
done.
Wow.
Yeah,
price is
crazy.
right. Cool,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
win a copy.
Yeah. Written by, I say it, written by David McElhaney. Did I say it right, bud?
Nope. Michael Laney.
There you go. Jim Mooney's on art, Brett Breedon's on inks, Petra Scotese is on colours, and Janice Chiang is on letters. Who, 13th, I think this is yours, is it not?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Before we get any further, can we not just say functional, functional, functional? Oh, because this is what this book all is. 13, take it away
Yeah,
and
so
burn it.
well, I got a story for you guys. So
Oh, God, I'm all ears.
as a young cub, I
Oh, here we go.
that's funny. No, so I remember the cartoon. I agree with you 1,000,000%, Johnny, on the intro is definitely up there. That'll be a great debate as to which is the greatest cartoon opening, but this is definitely in that conversation.
Definitely.
And then the toy line came out. So like I said, I had gotten Lion-O. My favorite really was Tigra, but I wanted to try to get my hands on a Mum-Ra action figure, but these things were kind of expensive even by 80 standards.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And
I think it was about £9, £10 a shot, which
yeah,
I think was one of the reasons why Transformers, you had to be mega rich to get Transformers, right? I
yeah.
don't know any kid that had Optimus Prime.
I knew a couple. Yeah, I knew a couple
My
of
brother
kids.
had Prime.
Yeah. But when it came to Thundercats too, my sister even liked Thundercats, so she had gotten a Chitara figure, and that was pretty much it for our Thundercats collection. But in loving the cartoon so much, I thought they did a tremendous job with the storytelling, the art, the animation. It had me invested in Thundercats, and I thought that this was something that was going to stick around for a very long time, and I was proven right.
Four
So
seasons? 4 seasons, is it?
something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
So, you have a great cast too doing that cartoon. Larry Kenny, the guy that does the voice of Lino, I met him at a con.
Mhm.
Really cool dude. I'm like, I met Lino.
Did he
But
give you like a moral at the end of the conversation? Remember, meeting strangers are just friends we have not met yet.
what's funny though is with voice actors, people were just walking on by him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Unless there's a poster behind him that says, I'm the voice of Lino. No one would know. But, it's been a long time. So this franchise has lasted for a long time. And
Mhm.
you had the toy line and now the comic book. And I couldn't get enough Thundercats, among other things back then, like G.I. Joe, Transformers, He-Man, to say the least. But so on comes the comic book. I did have this comic, and I'm going to say did. And I remember reading it, and then I had another issue of the Thundercat line. I think it was number 6. And then one day I was like, I'm running out of room in my comic book box. And thus these went to the trash.
I'm running out of room, so I'm going to trash 2 comics.
No, it
Nice.
wasn't just this. It was this and New Universe comics, if anybody remembers those from Marvel.
God,
Yeah, so I'm like, I don't like these anyway. So whatever, if I only have this amount of room to save stuff, I'm like, Thundercats had to go. And I'm like, I like the cartoon better. I have the toys.
Go!
Yeah, exactly. So unfortunately, when we're little kids, we don't know better. And now this book is worth quite a bit of money. And I think it's priceless in terms of those that love the franchise and like the nostalgia of it, like I do. But now for me to try to go and get this comic again, I'm definitely going to pay the price for it. I've seen it at cons. It is not a cheap book anymore, and some of the issues in the run are hard to find. But issue one, you got to start somewhere, right?
Right.
And I feel like on the editing side, you have Jim Shooter involved in a lot of these
Mm-hmm.
toy line adventures.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are with Thundercats. You're basically getting something that mirrors the first episodes of Thundercats, where they're fleeing their home planet of
Yep.
Thundera, which blows up, and they're on their way to search for a new place to live. But in there, the nobles, as they're called, the main group of Thundercats,
Mm-hmm.
they're all together, and most of their race is eliminated by a group of mutants from the planet Plundar. And thus begins the story of a young Lino who doesn't know what the hell's going on, but he's
Mm-hmm.
being mentored by Jaga, the eldest and wisest and leader of the Thundercats at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Why is he
So
the only one that got clothes?
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm confused why they put clothes on. I'm like, if they're all right for the first 9 pages, walking around cat naked, then
yeah. So
surely it got.
supposedly they didn't need to have those garments on their home planet when they were
Um,
going to their new destination. Jaga created something that they could wear, protect them, and with it came weaponry as well.
so I can just imagine, right, we're going to have some clothes to protect us. Chitara, wear this swimsuit. Spot on. Way protection to the max.
hmm I think it's funny, like how this concept came to be. I mean, even the cartoon, when I watched it, this version of their origin, I was kind of puzzled why they didn't have anything on. But
Yeah.
whatever, they were clothed and they got weapons, and they were ordered by Jaga to go into suspended animation as they traveled through space to
Uh-huh.
their new destination, and they did age somewhat. Lino
Good.
emerges an older adult, and Jaga is obviously no longer with them because in order to guide them to this planet, he had to uh, pilot the ship manually.
Yeah, Jean Grey of the ship.
He literally got phoenixed, except he didn't get burned.
Well,
So,
Obi-Wan Kenobi's does need to. In all fairness, he makes quite a few appearances in the show
mhm.
and comic book.
And to be fair, we've seen stories very similar to this when you have a race of people fleeing an exploding planet or fleeing
Mhm.
a planet altogether because they're being pursued by their enemies, whatever the case may be. But I think the real fun began when they landed on Third Earth, as they called it,
Yeah.
which very closely resembled Earth, except this is a fantastical and magical place. The sky was the limit because if you were digging the Thundercats at this point and their villains, you're like, wow, they're on a new place. They're lost. So am I.
Mhm.
But now you join them on that journey to figure out what happens next. And
Mhm.
then the best part of all, towards the end of the book, the inhabitant of this third Earth was once upon a time ruled by a villain named Munra, who's one of my
The
favorite villains
ever
of all time.
living.
Yep. So he makes his first appearance in this comic book, and everyone who knew of Thundercats at this point from the cartoon and the toys knows that Mum Ra was very much their nemesis by far.
Oh, he's a badass. He's a
Absolutely,
badass.
he was just evil beyond evil, or
Mhm.
evil incarnate, as he would even describe himself. So a true and fitting villain for Lino, because you have the inexperience of Lino who's wielding all this power but doesn't know how to use
Mm,
it. Mumra, who has power, knows what to do with it,
mm,
but it's not an easy challenge for Lionel. They could never really kill him like that.
no,
So there are episodes where Mumra appears to have met his demise, but
as
somehow
all
he
good
was
villains do. As all
correct, and then he just comes back. Surprise! You can't kill me as long as evil exists. Mumra exists was one of his lines. So I absolutely love this toy line. Love the cartoon. The comic, though, I this particular issue mirrored the cartoon very, very much, very
yeah,
closely.
yeah,
And I think my only knock on it really is the coloring. So I remember when I had bought this book, I'm like, the color scheme is a little off. That
yeah.
was one of my complaints as a kid. It still is today.
Hmm.
And the color scheme kind of remained that way. I felt like the colors bled in onto bled a little bit here and there in the way that I didn't like. But that was really my only complaint with the comic.
You are being very charitable, I have to say, because I love Thundercats, but I also recognize that the title intro we looked at earlier is by far the best thing in the Thundercats cartoon. Because once that's over, it is back to bog standard Western animation, which wasn't very good back then, and clunky all over the place. Don't get me wrong, I have a Thundercats box set as much as the next person, same as I've got a He-Man one, but that's a different kettle of fish, I suppose. Professor, Thundercats fan?
I was back in the day with the with all these cartoon shows that I think we're going to be talking about. They were always on either right before I caught the bus to go to school, or right when I got home. The cartoons were on, so you'd watch Thundercats or He-Man or whatever else was on. This particular show, I thought it was not just popular with me; it was popular with all the kids on the block, so to speak. So when one of us found something to watch that was cool, we all would. So everybody who thought Thundercats was cool. The thing that I liked about Thundercats that I think that they did differently from other shows was it was almost like a kind of like a serial type show. Things that happened in one episode affected what happened later. And that didn't happen a lot in other cartoons, which was a kind of one and done show.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I mean, He-Man was just like plot of the week stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or lesson of the day.
Yeah, Thundercats
had lessons. Snarf.
Yeah, but I mean, Thundercats had an overall arcing storyline, which carried through. So I thought that was interesting. And then LJN with their Thundercats property, I think there was a bunch of spin-off type stuff that wasn't quite Thundercats, but was very similar. I don't know if you remember, like the Silverhawks, and then I can't even remember some of the other stuff, but it was like there were a lot of things years afterwards that you were like, this reminds me of Thundercats, but it's like a different animal base. But interesting stuff. I loved all the characters. I don't like you said, Johnny. I don't know how much it holds up if I was to throw an episode of Thundercats in now. Probably not hold up very well. But yeah, good childhood thing. I really loved it.
I want to throw one thing in here too, like the Star Comics imprint from Marvel.
Yes,
it was not. I wasn't too wild about Star Comics in general. Never mind like New Universe, as I mentioned earlier, but the Star Comics line, I was just not too thrilled about it. And I thought that Thundercats would have done a better job, but they didn't last too many issues over here in the U.S. But not long after, I know they had a long run in the U.K. version.
Yep, Marvel UK took them on for a while. Thundercats are a huge property nowadays. They've been at Wildstorm. They've been at DC Comics, which Wildstorm was the imprint at the time. There's mature books out there featuring the art of Ed Baines, which have all sorts of crazy crap going on. They've had a reboot in a cartoon show, Lionel, voiced by Will Friedle, the guy who was the rebooted Batman and Batman Beyond.
Yep.
So these cats aren't going away anytime soon. I think they are quite. At one point, I think I used to have a Chitara figure, like the new lot rather than the old lot. Don't know where that went. I call this book functional because that's exactly what it is for me. This book, you read it, it is tone for tone, point by point, the same as the first episode of the cartoon show. I personally would be gutted if I'd bought this comic book as a kid and found out it was the exact same thing that I've just watched on the telly. Thundercats was one of those shows, like He-Man, like She-Ra, that translated really well over here. Like Dungeons and Dragons, that was huge as well. Things that weren't so huge, things like Galaxy Rangers, G.I. Joe never had a big following cartoon-wise over here. And we've already talked about the toys from that. All I can say is I'm glad that I hope everyone got royalties for it, because this is like phoning it in by the numbers. This, I can just imagine, no disrespect to anybody who creates comic books, but you got to be a little bit like phone it in when you're actually just watching the show and then pausing it on your VCR. Yes, there were VCRs back then, so you could write down the dialogue. What do you say? Let's just roll back 10 minutes. Oh, there, yeah, got that, yeah.
Or even that, pause it so you could draw the next panel.
This was
Exactly.
at the end of the day cheaper advertising for the toy companies by going through a comic
Yeah.
book company, and
Yeah.
then the comic companies make money off it too. Because a kid's going to look at this and say, look, I watch a cartoon all the time, but we don't have the power to DVR it like we do today
Yeah.
and go back to it. So you can't watch an episode. You're tired of playing with the toy, then at least you have the comic.
Mhm.
So there were a lot of benefits to having the comic, no matter how well or not well it was done back in those days.
Well,
Oh, the funny thing is that this issue of Thundercats probably sold more than any issue of Batman that's selling today.
on that note, it's time for an advert for one of our other shows. As we're talking figures, it seems, is that Batman or Avengers that you said? I can. There was something
Either.
like
Either.
both.
Yes, both together.
Bud has the spirit of Mum-Ra.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas, Bud.
Mum-Ra, the ever disappointed.
That's me.
All right, we're talking figures. There's only one place to go. Time for a crisis. Crisis in the Toyverse there from Bobo. Check it out. Very good show. Lots of fun. I will notice you can laugh. You can have your hardy hars at the bat all you like. There's no Avengers in that that trailer. Just saying.
I spent the whole commercial going Bud-Ra.
Bud-Ra, the ever disappointed.
Bud-Ra, the non-forgiving.
Yes. Yep, for sure.
Oh my God.
New toy line. Where's the comic?
All right. Okay. So I can just say the villains will be a host of Marvel execs coming to like kowtow down to Bud-Ra. Please, Bud, like our book. Your book is rhymes with sight. Beyond rhymes with sight.
I'll get like a stamp of approval or something. Just be like, boom.
Boom. Yeah. All right. Funny enough, we're taking the Mickey out of Bud-Ra, but it's Bud's choice next. And
Yay.
in time honored tradition, check it out. This is it. Boom.
Who needs Superman when you have Firestorm?
Yeah. Oh my God. All right. Okay. So, superpowers. Now, if you're thinking the cartoon was groovy, just wait till you see the figures, because the figures, they are classic. The 2 seconds there they are. Look at those.
Oh, they're colorful, aren't they?
Oh man, that rocks. That.
They're colorful, not very posable. But hey.
There's an advert. There's an advert where the kids are playing with the figures and you have to squeeze the legs for the arms to move.
Oh
My wife-
yeah.
Yeah.
I used to have all these figures when I was a kid.
My wife's like, why does it look like they're performing a sex act? I'm like, well,
I love, I had the Flash figure and you had to squeeze his arms for his legs to go.
oh, did you? Did his legs go? Did
Just
his
had to
legs,
squeeze his arms and his legs were kicked. And
I
you
will say-
squeeze Martian Manhunter's arms and he went like that, like the punch. Yeah.
The Dr. Fate one looks the bomb.
Yeah, I do like that one.
Some of the figures are really, really good. The Hawkman figure was really, really a good figure.
Brainiac.
But the thing is that they all had the same kind of sculpt, the same kind of posability, not much. But it was cool to get all those figures.
Yeah.
And this is actually the introduction for me to like the other members of the Justice League. I remember when I must have been like 12 or something when I forgot my first Superpowers figures when they first came out. But I picked up a Martian Manhunter figure. I had no idea who the hell he was because he was never in the cartoon. And I was like, "Who's this guy? I'm getting him." And then, and of course, my brothers. I remember though we went in. There was a whole rack of Superpowers figures. I came out with a Martian Manhunter. My brother came out with a Green Arrow, and my other brother got Hawkman. And like I was like, Hawkman was the only one I really knew. And
you agree with envy?
No, I just remember saying, "Wow, these figures are cool." And when I get into something, that's when I started getting into. Well, now I got to go track down these comics to find out who the heck these characters are, because I know Martian Manhunter was not in the cartoon, so I was like, "Who's this guy?" And then seeing Darkseid, like Darkseid came out, I think, before the cartoon.
Yeah.
And I didn't know who Darkseid was or Desaad or any of those fourth world Kirby characters. I didn't know who they were.
So that brings us nicely to the comic book. This is DC Superpowers Volume 2, Number 1, from September '85. You can get this for as little as £5 on eBay. Again, if you're buying on eBay or any bidding site, don't forget to check the grades before you buy. You don't want to be disappointed thinking you're going to get near mint if it's really cheap. Go collect grade 9. Give me some prices.
$75.
No, lower.
50.
Lower.
Wow.
25.
26.
Wow. Okay.
That's all. It's written by Paul Kupperberg. Jack Kirby's on art. Inks, Greg Theakston. Although inks is a little bit of a misnomer for this book. I think instead of inks, it should be DC standard format mixer.
Embellishment.
Just to kind of like make the characters look a little bit more like they were supposed to. Colors are by Joe Orlando. Letters, I did have the letters written down somewhere. We'll have to wait till we get into the book to find that. I apologize. Professor, this is your choice. Take it away, sir.
Oh, so yeah, this book really was one of those quick follow-ups to the success of the toy line, right? Because the first Superpowers comic, they had the initial 8 or 9 figures of the line came out, and then they started really taking off. So it was like scrambling to get the second series out. And I remember, I think we talked to Paul Kupperberg some time ago, where we talked about this book, where he wrote this and didn't find out Kirby was doing the art until he started seeing this artwork come in. So this was kind of like this is Kirby's last DC work, right? Because it was post Hunger Dogs and bringing back Darkseid. This is basically, work for hire for Kirby, right? He wasn't doing anything else. I think this might have been his last work altogether, right?
Well, I think he did some work.
80s, 85.
I think he did some work for. I think he did some work for Topps at some point.
Yeah, did you do like the Shield or something like that?
No,
But
yeah,
anyway,
he did some like sort of ideas for tops from the Trigo superhero.
this was the only work of the 80s that I saw Kirby do. I didn't know who Kirby was when I picked this book up. I was like, oh yeah, he's his teeth. The guy, people's teeth are all wrong.
Dude has no elbows.
Yeah, it was weird. It looked different from all the other stuff that was coming out in the 80s. So seeing Kirby, I mean, now you look at it and it's classic, right? So but again, I think this is a lot of the this is the place where I'd never really seen Kirby draw any other DC superheroes. You know, I'd never seen him draw Hawkman or Firestorm or even Batman and Robin, really, you know. So it was interesting to see that one splash. But reading this book, basically, you know, the story is picks up right after Hunger Dogs. The Darkseid and his minions have to flee Apocalypse because there's a rebellion going on and they need to get out. So they end up going to Earth and the seeds. I was going to say the seeds of doom, where Darkseid casts the seeds out to turn Earth more like Apocalypse, right? And then that's when the Justice League. Even though they don't really call them the Justice League in this, right? They're the
superpowers, super friends.
They don't call them that. So, but seeing all these characters, and of course, in Justice League fashion, they split up into teams of 2 or 3, and tune in for the next 6 issues, right? Because it's the different team ups, and they take on the Darkseid's minions.
I have a quick question. What's Big Bad doing in a Wonder Woman costume?
Interesting, right?
That's the superpower machine.
Hey, she's got some superpowers indeed. Sorry.
No, but it's interesting. It's interesting to see Kirby's takes on all these DC characters because, my big argument with DC is always that they kind of always look. They don't look fluid. They're always kind of rigid and wooden, and not very dynamic in the art. And this is mid '80s, so this is about to change with Crisis. But having Kirby draw these characters, and you can actually see, like, not in this panel, of course, but the kinetic energy kind of comes off the page like Kirby's famous for. Of course, this one actually looks like Hawkman's flying, and are those guys both taking off? Because that's Red Tornado doesn't take off like that.
No, exactly.
But interesting. The writing, I think, is a bit simplistic. I know that this is supposed to be probably a lot of people like myself, maybe their first introduction to some of these characters in some of the DC universe. Maybe they're only picking it up because they got the toys. So you have to touch on Martian Manhunter's weaknesses, fire, and then Aquaman is going to get dehydrated, and they have to actually say that in the script within the first couple of pages of them showing up. So
it's funny that's funny because that was one of my knocks on the book, actually, was the fact that if you're buying this book, you must have liked the figures. So you must have liked the original Justice League books in the first place to buy the figures. So therefore, I don't need you to explain to me that the Martian doesn't like fire. I don't need that. But
no, but you could be like me, who walked in and saw, there's Superman and Batman, but who's this green guy? He looks cool. I'm going to buy him. And then find out who he is way after the fact. I didn't know who Martian Manhunter was. No. So, but it was cool. But some of my first exposure to a lot of these characters was seeing them on the pegs at my local toy store. And Green Arrow, didn't really know who Green Arrow was. I knew all the Super Friends, right? So all those characters I knew. But yeah, when you saw, like, of course, I was hoping that they would come out with like the Legion of Doom figures, which they never really did. We got a couple of them, but this was a super fun toy line, turning into kind of the comic not as fun as the toy line was, and the cartoon. The cartoon was actually an afterthought for me because at that point, like I remember the first few seasons of Super Friends, didn't really follow it to Superpowers Galactic Guardians. I don't know if I ever watched that. That might have been, after I stopped watching Saturday morning cartoons.
I have never seen Super Friends or Galactic Guardians.
You never saw Super Friends ever?
Never. Yeah, nope, not. We were lucky to get the New Adventures of Batman. And Robin. That's the Adam West version, not the
even the Legion of Doom. You don't?
Nope.
No. Okay.
Nope. Just whatever's on that Batman cartoon.
You'd probably at this point you'd probably think that it was terrible, but it's fun.
No, this book reads. I think you talk about it being kinetic, and it is in places, but the book reads like a '60s book, and it's ironic because that's one of the things you don't like about like mid '80s DC stuff is that it reads.
But it reads like a '60s Marvel book. It doesn't read like a '60s DC book.
Of course. Well, how'd I forget that bit? 13. What was your take on this?
I think, as I said earlier, DC had to do something to stay in the game, if you will, because not only are you have all these other toy companies looking to comics for stories, but then the comic publishers, what are they doing? So they're doing their own lines, own superhero stories, which are obviously phenomenal. But then in comes toys. This thing about toys, and we got to get a toy of this, got to get a toy of that. Marvel had already their secret war stuff out, the book. You had the figures. DC had to answer, but they answered back with Jack Kirby. So in coming with the comic book, right, it does look a lot to me of old Jack Kirby stuff, which is classic in itself, because he did make these characters fluid and whatnot. But still, looking back at history now, I don't know how successful this really became. Right, I feel like these characters, after the cartoons, after the toys, they kind of disappeared for a bit, and it's not until recent history where you got Justice League animated, and they kind of brought the fever back for the cartoons, the figures, and everything else, movies, the rest. But everyone knows that Darkseid is one of Jack Kirby's pet projects, and I'm always up for that, no matter what setting it is or great level of reading or whatnot. I get any chance to see Darkseid is phenomenal. I was just captivated by the art more than I was with the story, because even at this time, as a young kid, I knew a lot about the Super Friends. I watched the cartoons. I read the comics. I did read some of the New God stuff. So I was familiar, not an expert, but familiar enough with like Darkseid is definitely a bad guy. So I knew that. And with using my knowledge today, going back, it's like you don't get to see Kirby draw these characters like that, especially as Superman. Very rare to see Kirby do this. I do own this series. I bought it more because of Jack Kirby. I'm not too wild about the story. My favorite part of the book is really when they're all gathered, the big splash panel right there machine. Because if you look at each character, he drew their personality. You didn't have to read. You could read how they're posed. That just gives you an idea. Like Hawkman is in the back there.
Yeah.
That literally mirrors his personality. The guy's ready to go, but he's just not saying anything until he's really needed.
Flash is in the sprinter's stance.
He's ready to go. Yeah, and there's always Green Lantern sitting on his ass. But, this was a great panel for me. I love the Dr. Fate in here, which is another one of my favorite characters. But I agree with all the points that Bud made with the story. To use Aquaman and Martian Manhunter in issue 1, and they both pretty much have the same weakness. Like, if you go near fire, we're both in trouble.
Johnny, are they still fixing Superman's head in this?
I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. I don't.
It looks like most of the heads look like Kirby, but then it looks like they might have kind of tooled with Superman a little bit.
I think Superman's been amended. I think Green Arrow's has been amended.
Yeah.
But body wise, they're all I mean, even Robin's got more shoulders than God knows, what. Bless him.
One other thing I want to throw out here in closing is the panel designs by
Yeah, it's a
Kirby.
shout.
If you go
Yeah.
throughout the book, some of these panels don't look like your typical square boxes. Some of them do, because
Yeah.
that's what Kirby kind of used way back when. But at this point in the game for Kirby, some of these panel designs were definitely unique. And that's one thing that for a book like this, that may not be worth much money today, to me, that's where the value as a collector comes in, because you're getting the King, you're getting panel designs, you're getting DC's probably premier characters all together. And I think that's where the value of the series lies.
Yeah, Kirby was always innovating, right? Always changing, always trying to keep up with the times a little bit. But yeah, there was a page you stayed on for a long time that I thought was super interesting.
Oh, which one?
It was the panels that kind of look like a scarab almost. Like, it was a 4-panel layout.
Yeah, with the thing at the top. Yeah, I like that one. The thing I like about Kirby's is this. Kirby's art always this technical stuff that kind of this crazy wild machines that just look like some sort of organic creature that's just been built. I don't know. It's fine. The book, I thought the book read, simplistically, because it had to explain what everyone was doing, but then it also read very much like a Justice League book. So whereas the Thundercats book was just kind of like, hey, it's a rehash of the show, this was still trying to be the essence of what the characters were in the Justice League characters. But it is, again, it serves the purpose. You're supposed to read the book, work out who the bad guy is, and then you know how to play with your figures. There you go. It's like an instruction manual, but with Jack Kirby.
And don't burn up Aquaman and Martian Manhunter. That is not advised.
Just for those who are still at the figures, don't burn any of the figures. All figures hit fire. Just want to put that out there. All right, excellent. A good choice. I could have sworn we would have ended up with some Secret Wars in there somewhere, but no. The last one is my choice, and unfortunately, I don't have a trailer for this one. What I do have is the figure, though, so we can have a look at the figure. This is the mighty, can't believe I'm going to say this, Crusader. Look how cool he looks. All right.
No, so actually, I've already told you I collect Marvel Legends, and Crusader's actually getting a figure early next year. They're as part of the Marvel Legends line, which makes you wonder if they're going to reboot the comic at some point.
Oh my god!
This character never had a cartoon series, did he?
No, I don't think it did.
No, it was just a toy line.
Just the toy line.
Just the toy line. That was
just the toys.
Just the toys. All right, let's have a look at the book then. This is it. When I find it, there it is. Saga of the Crusader, Crystal Warrior, number 1 from May '83. So it's our oldest book today. eBay, you can get this for the princely sum of £7 to £8. Go collect, grade 9. Anyone want to take a guess?
$30.
Nope, lower.
$13.
A little bit higher.
15.
16. Sold. Written by Mary Jo Duffy with Brett Blevins on art. Vinny Colita is on inks. Jim Novak's on letters. Colors are by Andy Ranchhouse. A couple of concept designs on this one. The concept is actually from Mark Grunwald, Ralph Macchio, and Jim Shooter. Art designs are by John Romita Jr. So when we talk about a kind of murderer's row of creators, that's pretty much it. That's a good run. The creators for Marvel, for sure. And then they went and did this. So the story is very much how to play with the toys. That's it. You get sibling rivalry, the Dungeons and Dragons style kind of facade, and then you get why there's a sibling rivalry. There's a bad guy. There's a prophecy of doom. There's a hot chick who's going to turn evil. There's an innocent girl who's going to fall for the good guy. It is by the numbers. That said, how they do it is quite decent, I suppose. It is a little bit Conan in places. a little bit Krull. Do you remember Krull, the TV show, the
Yep.
movie?
Yep.
A little bit like that. The art, I think, is serviceable. I don't think it's like out there fantastically. A bit John Buscema in places with the poses for some of the female characters. It's not until Moltar, which has got to be like a kind of, you know, what should we call our son? We'll call one of them Crystar, because like that sounds like a good name, and the other one we'll call him Moltar. You might as well have called him Destruction Lad for trying to preempt the future that he's going to have.
I like that. It's like, yeah, we'll name one of our kids that's going to grow up to be a crystal rock Crystar, and we'll name the guy that's going to grow up to be a molten pile of lava Moltar.
Yeah, it's like bull.
Coincidence.
Coinkydink.
Yeah, is there evidence? I don't know. Let's go ask Uncle Feldspar.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
For all its inaneness, which I think we can all say is pretty much standard in these types of books to an extent, I think it plays out really well when, you know, Christ ends up getting killed. His girlfriend jumps into bed with the bad guy, and then Crystar is reborn just as Moltar, and the bad girl is reborn into lava creatures. And there it is, by the numbers. Check it out. I came across this story. It was a backup strip in the Return of the Jedi weekly comic. That's how I know this. I can't ever remember seeing the toys, but that's how I know this book. $2 would get you 51 pages worth of craziness. I didn't mind it back in the day. Reading it now, I'm thinking, my God, why didn't I pick Turtles? But still.
I actually owned a couple of these figures. Actually,
Yep.
my little brother owned a couple of these figures.
Right, okay.
Oh, you know, we all played with them. But the toys weren't that great. That they were not very poseable.
Yeah.
The gimmick with the Crystar figures is that they all were molded in clear plastic, so you could actually see through them. And they came with like we showed the toy in the box, but they came with like this little lens thing that you could look through that turned everything like prismatic. But
cool.
But the jarring thing with the toys, or maybe it's cool depending on how you like seeing how things were built, was you could actually see the joints and how they connect because everything was see through.
Same with the Micronauts though.
Yeah. So it's about the same thing, but all of the good guy characters that were made out of the crystal rock were see through, and then of course you had a couple of the bad guys, but they only came out with like 5 or 6 figures, and that was it. They never came out with like a second wave or anything like that.
Did anybody read this book? Like you had it, Bud, for a while?
Nope.
No, you didn't have the book at all. No,
I did not. No, I never read it. I did not
read it
know.
today.
So this is when I did read it today. I did not know the like what came first, the chicken or the egg kind of thing. I didn't know if it was a toy line the comic was based on, or the comic line that the toy was based on. But I think this is the only one today that was that they came up with Marvel came up with the concept
with the idea to make toys down the line.
With the idea to make the toys, and when they wrote the book before they even published it, they went to the toy line because you can see the ad for the toys in this first issue. So, it's interesting. I mean, I like this whole thing in the early 80s. I mean, there was a ton of Marvel did a ton of toy concept lines, and not all of them were super successful, but some of them were pretty interesting. Mask, like you said, Sectars, remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Bill Mantlo had a second career coming up with these toy lines.
Yeah, well, Rom.
Yeah, Rom.
Mm-hmm.
We have to mention.
Well, Rom was licensed, though.
Yeah, true.
But,
13th. What was your take on Crystar? The Saga of Crystar.
Let me be crystal clear. The cover is phenomenal.
All right.
I like that. And the answer is in the beginning with a letter from Jim Shooter explaining the origin of Crystar. It was developed in comics for toys to be made later. with
Okay, cool.
Remco liking what they did with the story.
Uh-huh.
Now, with the story in the comic book, I feel like it's dragged out. I agree it's by the numbers. As far as the art is concerned, I felt it was great, and then it waned.
Yeah.
And then it was great, and then it waned.
That was,
So,
I think that was Vince Coletta, though. I mean, because all of a
mhm,
sudden the backgrounds disappeared. Did you see towards the end of the book? It
mhm.
was like, where'd all the backgrounds go?
Yeah, and you got the amount of pages in this book is what made me feel like, oh my God, is this thing going to end? But
Yeah.
you get it. It's a kingdom. It's a fantasy setting. You get evil wizards, magic, and sorcery, and all this stuff. And it's a dawn of a new age for this world, wherever it is. And I get that, and a
Mm.
transformation into something else. And who you thought was loyal is now betraying you, and etc. You mentioned that one of the characters in here, Johnny, the hot chick becoming a villain, she became even hotter, pun intended. You know,
Good.
but i- it's this. You got to look at the time and the era, right? Dungeons and
Right.
Dragons was huge. Sword and fantasy and all that stuff was big.
Conan
Um,
was still popular.
absolutely. And DC had already had their hand with Warlord doing
Camelot
those kind of
3000.
Camelot, right? Exactly. So, you have that. So to get something new and make it stick out above everyone else in this time was very difficult. I remember seeing the toys on the toy shelves for Christ Star and stuff like that. It just never appealed to me because there was so many other things that grabbed my attention and interest.
Mm.
So I don't think the comic did that. I don't think the toy line did that. Although it was cool to see like on the shelves, like, oh, you can see through this character. But yeah, I kept walking because my interest lied elsewhere. But good attempt on Marvel to at least do something like this. And back then, a $2 cover charge for something like this, I don't know how I would have felt about it, about $2 back then for a book like this.
I mean, in its defense, it is pretty much for the most part a one and done.
Right.
I know there is a kind of theme, like a thread running through it if you want to follow the love lawn, but
Yeah. How
I think
Christ Star and the other people were drawn just totally threw me off because I felt the art was better when they were normal, and then now they transformed into these amazing
oh
crystal
really?
creatures and things. I felt it just didn't do it for me.
I thought the other way. To be fair,
Well,
I
what
think
makes me say that too is the coloring. I think if you
mm,
used the coloring back then and coloring today is different. I think if it was in the hands of colorists today, I think it would have been a different story.
mm.
But this was back then, so
Cool. There you go. Right, as a treat, and I say treat in inverted commas. Um, we haven't talked about the book because we've talked about the book before. All right. So we're not going to bore you with this conversation again. But whilst I was looking through all the good old folks at YouTube looking for the videos for today, I came across this one and I have to show it. We've talked it right at the start of the show. It's the granddaddy of the figures, movies, comic book toy line. It is, of course, the mighty Star Wars. Check it out.
Star Wars. You and your children loved it. Now, the Earthlings at Kenner have asked my associate and me to present the Star Wars collection. Truly remarkable toys and games for your children. What are you so excited about now? My goodness, the Star Wars TIE Fighter and X-Wing Fighter. Now your children can relive our great space battles or collect our wonderful Star Wars companions with Kenner's Star Wars action figures. But it's a little new. Kenner's new radio-controlled R2-D2 anyone can command. The Star Wars land speeder that moves like it's floating. And here's Kenner's Death Star space station, 4 floors of action, a trash compactor too. Listen now too, that's the Star Wars electronic laser battle, a game of speed, reflex, and reaction. These and other toys and games in Kenner's Star Wars collection are sold separately. Batteries are not included. May the Force be with you and your children.
I'm cracking up because he put the other figures in the trash compactor.
Oh man, it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the same, would it, without having some Star Wars there.
Those sounds just took me back to my childhood.
Yeah.
Those
I-
beeps and those 80s computer beeps.
Class. I had the kind of Death Star. It didn't
Me
look like
too.
that one. It was like this round thing was concave. It was like a semicircle thing, not like that.
Mine looked exactly like that, and you had to build it. It took forever, and it never stayed together. And it was a mess. But I remember the trash compactor was my favorite part because it came with these little foam things that was supposed to be the trash, so you could put them in there, and then it came with the little Dianaga, whatever that little rubber monster figure. Yeah,
I always had so it was like a I don't know, like a half a sphere. So it was kind of like round. It had like a place you could put your Luke Skywalker. You could swing him across the bridge.
That one did too.
And then you'd look down and you could see that it was like it went forever. And I remember my brother and I playing with this Star Wars Death Star, and he couldn't work out why. If you look at the corridor, it seemed to go below the table. And I remember him looking under the table to see where it was. I'm like, dude, it's a mirror.
If you put Chris Starr in that trash compactor, who wins?
I think everyone wins.
Yeah, we all.
That's a comment.
That's cool. There you go. A blast from the past. We've looked at figures. We've looked at comics. We've looked at adverts. It is Christmas. It's the season of putting on your goodies list. See what you get this time around. Professor, thank you so much for spending the time.
Oh, thank you, Johnny. This is my favorite episode, I think. I like this. This was fun.
Good. Excellent. 13, thank you very much.
Of course. Thanks for the opportunity of revisiting my childhood.
You're more than welcome. For me, it's a childhood that is further in the past than it is for you, I think. Next time up, we are back before Crimbo, all right? And we have a very special episode. We are going to, I'll prime it for you now. Bud and I, we have been very naughty, for we are on the Jeopardy list.
Oh, jeez.
Better study up, boys.
May God have mercy on our souls. That said, we also have a special guest in the waiting to take part as well. So it's all around in a fortnight's time. Don't forget to come back and check us out for your non-Christmas vibed podcast. There you go. Well done. This one. Gentlemen, it's been an absolute blast. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Johnny.
I've been your host, Johnny Machine Hughes, and as always, adios.